looking at any of this, and I don't do this to be popular nor liked. I do this because there are things that need to be said that nobody else will say. Because everybody's either in bed with the right or in bed with the left. The alt-right and the alt-left. Now, the Cuomos and the Kennedys are obviously the alt-left. But what I was looking into, I looked into the Kennedy family, because what really interests me in the Cuomo affair is how this is attacked from the feminists in order to change the rules of the game, new rule that eliminates due process, eliminates the presumption of innocence. Now we're already seeing this in the lower courts, but they just want to, how shall I say, institutionalize it throughout. So anytime they want to take somebody out, all they have to do is he did this, he did that, and sexual harassment or corruption. And no evidence is looked at, and then that person falls. That's the objective with this case here on the political level, at least for the feminists. I mean, perhaps there's other agendas involved. I wouldn't be surprised, because these are all different factions working in tandem, if not in collusion. You know, the minoritist, the managerialist, the affirmative actionist. As I say, those are our fundamental problems. So if you look at the Kennedy family were part of the Third Reich that ushered in World War I, or they actually rose, I think, to that's where they made money. Could originally it was PJ Kennedy, of course, from Ireland, Catholic, a poor immigrant family. The father died, and at 14 he became the man of the house. His mother, they had a store that, amongst other things, I think it was like a general type store, but they sold alcohol, and they got into the bar business, which was part of the libertine and narcissism movement of the Gilded Age. You know, they were making money off of all of that. They weren't a part of it, but that's how they enriched themselves. And then when Prohibition kicked in, of course, they stayed in the distribution of alcohol, and that's when they really made a fortune, like everybody else. Because otherwise, it's highly doubtful with that type of business they would have, amassed a fortune. Because PJ also, he took that money, cleaned it, and invested in the stock market, and became made lots and lots of money in the bubbles that were going on, which caused the 29 crash. But I have to say, the Kennedy family were smart in a Machiavellian way. They wanted to reach the upper echelons of power. And PJ Kennedy, that was in Boston. They're from and Catholic family, they were not accepted into the upper echelons of Boston society, because I think Boston was probably even more conservative than New York City, when the Vanderbilts and the Astors, the Crass and Nouveau Riche, Vanderbilts and Astors, took over the social scene there. So Boston and Philadelphia are even more old guard of the Puritans, the Quakers, the original colonists. So, you know, he played his cards well, because, you know, he then got into also the political machine, but behind the scenes. It's actually where the power is. I mean, that's where I'm working, behind the scenes, but I'm not trying to get into power with any political party or, you know, any candidate or specific agenda, except an agenda that will uphold the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, international conventions, penal codes, civil codes, the due process, and that. Other than that, you know, I have no political ambitions. I just want it to be, you know, I mean, this is what a socialite does and a dowager does. I'm just here for oversight, that things are moving smoothly. And then you all squabble up on Capitol Hill and squabble between yourselves. Now, things are not moving smoothly, in large part. The Kennedy campaign. So, you know, PJ, and he played his cards well. And he primed his son, Joseph, to be ambitious and to get into politics and political power. And when I say politics, it's about the Machiavellian game playing politics, which is now the norm. All the politicians, everybody, what they're doing now is just power plays between themselves to see who can get into power. And they have the people so brainwashed that, oh, look, we have a Black person here, so you guys are liberated. Oh, we got an Asian here, so you guys are liberated. Oh, we've got lots and lots of women in positions of power, so you guys are liberated. And the people buy it. As ridiculous as it is, they do buy it. So, you know, Joseph, he was an ambassador to England, and those were in events leading up to the stuff here on here. Those were the events leading up to the rise of power of Hitler. And yeah, I guess it's in the article, the notes. I mean, I cropped, this is mainly from Wikipedia, but then I did get some magazine, some articles that I cropped about the different history and trajectory and profiles of the Kennedy family and their rise to power, as well as the scandals. So Joseph, you know, he was an ambassador. He was, yeah, it was like, no, we're not gonna help Britain. We're not gonna help anybody. This is, you know, that's their problem, which for a long time was the response of the Americans, and why Winston Churchill so lobbied the Americans to enter into the war. So, and there was even, I should have pulled this up, let's see if I can find it, but it was even so then the eldest son, Joseph Jr., which was John F. Kennedy's older brother, who was primed to be the heir apparent and become the president. Because Joseph had ambitions to become president, but I think he realized he wouldn't be able to. But his son, he could make that, you know, happen for his son, and, you know, that puts them all in power. So his son had even gone. to Germany. And I mean, this was incredible because he was basically pro-Hitler and I mean, this was a Nazi family. Yeah, Kennedy had expressed approval. This is the Joseph Jr. Kennedy had expressed approval of Adolf Hitler before the war began. His father, Joseph Sr., sent him to visit Nazi Germany in 1934. He wrote to his father and praised Hitler's sterilization policy as a great thing. That will do away with many of the disgusting specimens of men, Kennedy explained. Hitler is building a spirit in his men that could be envied in any country. Now, this is the ideology of the Kennedy family. They were Third Reichers, and they are now Fourth Reichers. Now, okay, they got rid of any kind of brain in the family. I mean, that's Joseph Jr. was killed, and that's when John F. Kennedy was brought in to become the new heir apparent. And John F. Kennedy was much more sensitive. I think his health problems definitely come from maybe him not being tough-skinned enough to deal with you know, everything that it implied being pushed into that position. Kingship. And of course, he has to marry the right woman, which becomes Jackie Bouvier. She may not be a dumb blonde, but she was dumb brunette. And, you know, a pampered little narcissist. I think she, you know, she instilled a little bit more class and morals in her children than any of the other Kennedys. But Caroline, I think probably they took John was probably, I always thought that he was assassinated because I think he was another threat. See, any of the other Kennedys, Ted, all the rest of them are totally corrupt. No morals. That's why they're all alcoholics, drug addicts, backstabbing, you know, little bitches. I mean, Carrie Kennedy, I cannot wait to get Carrie Kennedy on the stand and how she's going to have to prove how she's been having it all during her lifetime. Because her marriage certainly wasn't a success. Her daughters, they're just as narcissistic, I think, and you know, jumped in bed with their mother and the entire Kennedy clan. Fourth Reichers. And that's why, you know, the human rights, Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Institute, or whatever they're calling it these days, you know, they all have different names, but with the same mission and pulling the same crap, because all they do is give a whole bunch of experts who don't know anything, or who are producing really dangerous Nazi propaganda. They're given a voice through these things, and that's exactly what the Kennedy NGO is doing, with Carrie Kennedy at the lead. Ethel was at the lead before. I mean, Ethel, read my LinkedIn blog, because as I say, most of it is, I make a few comments, but most of it is long, but it's a copy paste from Wikipedia and articles. And I mean, Ethel, well, anybody who's lived in Washington for any amount of time knows about Ethel Kennedy and what a piece of work that woman was, and how abusive she was to her children. And the result was you know, I forget, there's, well, drug addiction all over the place. I think one committed suicide, disaster as a mother, I mean, a real social and a little whore when she snagged her husband. I mean, that was a and is a calculating bitch. She's still, you know, alive and given all sorts of awards and told how wonderful she is, when nothing could be farther than the truth. She and the entire Kennedy clan have just been taking the country for a ride and cashing in on the assassination of JFK and Bobby. And they really should be ashamed of themselves. And this is kind of my message to the three Cuomo girls, because they're still young. I mean, I'm willing, the 20-year-olds that are coming in and the 30-year-olds, they may lack the experience to know exactly how the world works, because it does, with experience comes a little bit of enlightenment. And the more experience you have, the more enlightened you become. And I've had a life filled with more experiences than I think a lot of people experience in several lifetimes. So yes, as I keep on telling everybody, I am an old lady, but I'm not a brain dead bimbo. Like Carrie Cuomo, like Caroline Kennedy, well, Carrie Kennedy Cuomo, Caroline Kennedy, Ethel Kennedy, Rose Kennedy, Jackie Bouvier Onassis, well, Bouvier Kennedy Onassis. See, when JFK disappeared through the sea, and she had to go and find herself a new meal ticket, even though, you know, she had more than enough of a name to have become, you know, independent. And she was in, you know, the publishing, you know, she was a career woman. Yeah, this is our problem with these career women. You know, she cashed in, I think, probably what she could, but, you know, saw that she couldn't have the lifestyle that she had wanted without a man, and a rich man. And look at who she married. So, as I say, in Washington, the more awards that somebody has, the more that you can put your seal on it that it's a fourth riker. Because if they're getting awards, it's because they are espousing the politically correct, outright or out left agendas of the different factions. Again, all of them are what managerialism. That's cross board. Doesn't matter if you're alt right or alt left. Managerialism, techie liberalism, all of them. Because of course, this is making the people dumber and dumber and dumber working, you know, and more dependent. Because if everybody watches here, everybody's becoming extremely dependent on technology, on Wi-Fi access, and everything that goes with it. Now, if all of a sudden the powers that be shut down Wi-Fi access, and it's a good possibility, oh, that would never happen in America the Great. Anybody who says that is so naive We need to ship them off to the funny farm. Because that will be the end game. I mean, of course, because here, what the idea, I mean, as I say, the Koch brothers, they did a good job of how are we going to combat this civil rights movement of the 60s, because this just can't happen. So they assassinate JFK, they assassinate Bobby, they assassinate Martin Luther King. Take out your leaders. Number one. I mean, you know, read the prints. Ask anybody who studied dictatorships and the rise to power of dictatorships. They'll tell you this is a classic case. So you take out any kind of, you know, real leadership. You promote, you take all the brown nosers, you make them, oh, you're wonderful, you're wonderful. You promote them up, you know, they'll produce the cacophony for you without you even having to pay them for it. I mean, of course, they get the job, but see, this time with the rise of the Fourth Reich, they were smarter in the sense they had learned with the Third Reich and the failures there. They had learned, or they knew that the Americans had fundamentally, this goes back to the Puritans and the Quakers, and this changed in the 1800s with the Wild West and the expansion there. And it was also because the founding fathers did not implement, you know, their ideals into a government, but game played. So of course, our revolution was no more successful than anybody else's revolution, and just created more problems than there were before. So, you know, the Fourth Reichers, with this rise to power, they were dealing with a population that hadn't had the same history as the Germans under dictatorial monarchs and you know, the feudal time. So they're dealing with a base of population a bit different, that was more because the people, the majority of the people, still want democracy in the United States. It's just, you know, the press is creating cacophony, the political parties are creating cacophony, the courts are creating cacophony, the different factions within the feminists, the minoritarists, the you know, white supremacists, the managerialists, as I say, that's across the board, the LGBT community. But all they want is getting into positions of power and control, and not advancing the rights or the plight, the interests of the different groups that they represent. So really, I mean, they're illegitimate. And all, in fact, all of these different, a lot of these different groups can be dismantled because they're terrorist cells, and they're just propagating ideologies and propaganda that is designed to rile up their group and incite conflict and confrontation between that group and the others. The Winters group, I attended that, and I posted the, I'm sure they're not happy about that at all if they've seen it, but too bad for them. I mean, I'm gathering evidence. I have been for 15 years. I tell everybody, I tell them I've been working on human rights violations for 15 years. That's like the FBI agent, he pulls out his badge at the beginning of the discussion and says, I hear, I'm here on official business. Anything that you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. I'm upfront with everybody. Don't lie who I am, and this, before in the spy work of World War II, pretending to be friends with the enemy. I'm like, no, I don't work like that. This is my country. Why should I have to pretend to be denouncing you when you're a crook and you're working to bring the government down? This whole thing about bringing, any groups working to bring the government down. Well, if you consider that to bring the people within your government who are involved in criminal activity or anti-constitutional activity, subversive activity against the Bill of Rights, yeah, I'm working to bring them down, as is my obligation and right as a citizen. But see, I'm working to support the American government because I want to save the American government from itself. Everyone who is in the American government at present are the ones who are working to bring it down. They are the ones who are treasonous, not me. And while I don't ever call for violence, I know that it will come because I am bringing the issues to the table in a peaceful, negotiating platform. But if nobody wants to negotiate with me, because I do represent the actual people of the blacks, the browns, the whites, the yellows, the reds, the greens, the LGBT, but the 90%ers of those groups. So that's what legitimizes me. Now, my opponents have no legitimacy, like Carrie Kennedy and her daughters, because one of them is promoting the SDGs. That I show is all fraudulent and just, BS propaganda from the development community. Another is working on inclusion and diversity. Where is she about the cultural differences between the Italians, the Southern Europeans, who hug and kiss everybody? I mean, really, you would be laughed at, and rightfully so, as some little prima donna American who shows up in Spain with a Spanish family, or Italy, wherever, Greece, and shows up at a wedding. He touched me. He hugged me. Oh, can I go to the police department and file a complaint for assault? I think your husband have you locked up. I think I might vote for him to lock you up. I mean, is this what the Kennedy daughters are about? I mean, I saw this. I saw his Governor Cuomo's girlfriend, Sandra Lee. I mean, okay, his first dumb blonde bimbo wife okay, at least she pretends to have a brain and be about human rights. And she reminded me of my ex-husband. Although he didn't have money to, he's from a poor family. But same hypocrisy going on in there. But then the second one, and with such good friends with these three daughters, I just, I'm sure it's the typical, prep school, narcissistic, 90210, party hardy girls. I mean, they're Kennedys, they're in bed with their mother, and have just drunk the Kool-Aid of their mother and going down the same road as her. I mean, they're going to end up in the courts the same as her. I mean, I've been out there, everything, all of these blogs, everything is on my website, and I've been knocking at every single door for 15 years. And unless somebody can sit down and explain, no, you don't have a case anywhere here for this reason, for that reason, under legal principles, and not some bullshit your bimbo is going to pull out. I mean, I know how to deal with your bimbos, believe me. I've done it all my life. I know how to take it, any bullshit that comes out of their mouth, and take it and shove it and ram it back down their throats, explaining to them what an idiot they are. And there's a good reason all of these little narcissistic bitches have been kept out of the workplace throughout history. But as I keep on explaining, the solution is not, as and I quote from, Joseph Jr. Kennedy, Hitler's sterilization policy is a great thing that will do away with many of the disgusting specimens of men. Hitler is building a spirit in his men that could be envied in any country. Well, which disgusting specimens of men should we be sterilizing and mass murdering to just get rid of the pest of society? The poor hard-working guy, or all the little parasites who are just con artists and